Shalom! Welcome to Parsha Wisdom from YCT. I'm Rabbi Dov Linzer, and I'd like to share with you a thought on this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha, we have the dramatic scene in Beshalach of the Egyptians running after Bnei Israel, drowning in the Yam Suf, and right then, the Torah tells us a very dramatic pasuk. After they drowned, it says that Bnei Israel saw the mighty hand that God had done in Egypt, and they believed in God and in Moshe, his servant. Now, Vayaminu ba'Hashem of Moshe Avdo. Now, what does the word Vayaminu mean? They believed. Does it mean that they believed that God exists? They didn't know that God existed until them. They believed that Moshe existed. I mean, Moshe was right there. And the point is that the word emunah in Hebrew does not mean to believe that, to believe the truth of a statement. That's Rambam's approach. That's medieval. In the Torah, emunah means to believe in, to have faith in. They believed in God. They put their trust in God. They believed in Moshe. They put their trust. They knew that God would be there for them. Moshe would be there for them. Whatever would happen, they had faith that God would be there to protect them. And that happened at that moment. Now, the problem with that is that right after the story of the Yam Suf, we see the exact opposite. Story after story, they don't have faith in God. The water is bitter, they complain. They have no food, they complain. There's no water, Moshe comes with the staff. And they're not just saying we need the food. They basically are saying, why did God take us out of Egypt? They don't have faith in God. They don't have faith in Moshe. So what we see from this is that faith is not something that once you have it, you can just assume that it's going to remain. Faith is something that needs to be cultivated, it needs to be nurtured, it needs to be supported. The Hebrew word for emunah is the same as the word of omain, or omanet, which is a nursemaid. Omain is to grow, to raise, to be held by someone, to be cultivated. We learned by Mordechai that it says that he was omenet Hadassah. He raised Esther. Hadassah, Esther, is also a plant, a myrtle, and he nurtured Esther. He cultivated it. He took care of it. That is what emunah is. Emunah is that feeling of being held by the other, and it is something that itself needs to be watered, nurtured, and cultivated. Now, the Torah tries to respond to that, because the Torah in the story of the man is all of a story of cultivating faith. It's not just God answering them with the man. It's God saying, every day you need to have trust that God is going to bring down the man. You can't hoard it. You can't hold on to it. Holding on to something makes us feel confident, secure. You know, they say that when Gorbachev visited America, he couldn't believe the supermarkets because that gives you a sense of food security. You know it's available to you. To live without having that food stored up, to have faith that God will provide it, that's a real challenge. And that's why Bnei Israel didn't listen. But to live day by that, that's a way to cultivate on a daily basis that sense of trust and faith. And similarly, we have at the end of the Parsha by Amalek, Moshe raises his hands and they win. Is that something magical? The rabbis tell us no. The rabbis tell us, did the hands really win the war? No. But when Bnei Israel looked at his hands and they looked towards God and they put their trust in God, then God was there for them so that they could actually be victorious. And the Gemara actually uses this to speak about the importance of not just doing mitzvot by rote. That if you're going to do a mitzvah, you have to do it with intent. You have to do it in the sense of, this is part of my relationship with God. And that, I think, is the question that we have to deal with. How do we cultivate a sense of faith? First of all, how do we move beyond belief that I believe that God exists, to beginning to feel that sense of, I believe in God. I believe that God is there for me. And once we have that sense, how do we continue to cultivate it? I think that the rabbis gave us certain methods, like you make a bracha before you eat, before you do a mitzvah, on a day-to-day basis. You feel that sense of what God has done for me. He's brought me fruit. I thank him for the food that he brings me. I thank him for waking up. I recognize God in my life. The bracha helps me express that, but it also cultivates that. But we I think, lose sense of that. We turn that into just a ritual. And then we ask, okay, check. I've done what the Mishnah Berurah says. And then we ask, where's our relationship with God? So I think that we have to realize the strength of emunah, of a life lived as a religious life, not just an observant life. And emunah as something that needs to be nurtured and cultivated. And I think that the rabbis have given us a way. We look up to Moses' hands. We think about God when we're doing the mitzvot. We feel what the point of the bracha is. And in that way, hopefully day to day, by expressing our connection to God and our belief in God, we will continue to cultivate that. Shabbat Shalom.